to you all. It's such a pleasure to have you all here today. I'm Penny Rowe. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Community Sector Council of Newfoundland and Labrador, and this is always one of our favourite events. It's such a pleasure to be able to do something which is all about celebration, all about making us all feel good, and about congratulating all of the people who contribute so much to their communities. One of the things I like about this event is that we have lots of volunteers here, and we have many people who work in voluntary non-profit organisations, as well as people from our provincial government and from our municipalities. So it's a really interesting way of seeing how we all connect and the point at which perhaps we all converge, which is when we volunteer and when we work in the community sector. It is where it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your background is, where you work, what your priorities in life are. This is where we all connect. One of the things that's really important as we have this prelude to Volunteer Week, and this is always the time we announce our theme, which as you can see is this year, Applauding Volunteers. And that's what we want to do. We actually want to applaud volunteers. Any of you who are on Twitter, our hashtag is Applauding Volunteers NL. That's Applauding Volunteers NL. So you can feel free to use your tweeting systems there today. You don't. Perhaps you might need to ask permission of the person you want to put out in the forefront, but if anybody objects, let the person with the camera know. One of the things during Volunteer Week that we always do is honour volunteers and applaud volunteers. But one of the things that always strikes me, and I've always been told by everybody, never to say this at the volunteer luncheon and during Volunteer Week. However, nobody has got too big a whip with me here today. We have fewer than 50% of our population who actually volunteer. The big question is, what can we do to encourage others to get into the fold and to start to figure out the absolute joy of being committed, of being engaged in your community. It's not all hard work. A lot of it's fun. A lot of it is meeting new people. But it's also about creating your own networks, changing your own lives perhaps, giving you an opportunity to meet people who you might not typically meet. So in many ways, for those of us who've been embedded as a volunteer and in the community sector for years, one of the things we always want to think about is how can we create new pathways for people who might typically not be involved. So we were kind of thrilled last year when the federal government launched a new program which was completely dedicated to encouraging young adults to become involved in their community, to find ways in which they could see bigger paths for themselves, how they could volunteer and provide service within their communities, how they could get involved in civic engagement, and how in fact by working as a collective they could start to see that individuals and groups of young people can become change makers. They can actually change the way in which our communities function. So we were really thrilled when the federal government came out with a program that gave us the opportunity to create a really exciting new initiative called Go-Getters. Go-Getters, Newfoundland and Labrador. Obviously it's a big difference in having a concept, writing a proposal, competing and getting the wherewithal to deliver a program. That's sometimes a tough part, sometimes it's the easy part, but we always have to figure out how we're going to implement a program. So when we received funding about this time last year to launch Go-Getters Newfoundland and Labrador, we had the good fortune of being able to hire a new employee, Lindsay Hines, who many of you may know. But Lindsay's job was to find a minimum of 15 young people who would like to commit to 120 hours of community service. And our objective, of course, was to work with some young people to give them an opportunity to get connected in a way perhaps they've never been connected before. So it's kind of a real treat for us today to be able to have a number of our go-getters with us And Lindsay is going to bring them all up to the stage, and she's going to have an interactive conversation with them to talk about how this particular program and this huge personal commitment that they have made in the last 10 months has not only impacted the organizations they've been involved with, but how they have seen changes in their own thinking and their own attitudes to being engaged in the community. So Lindsay, it's a great pleasure to invite you up here and a great pleasure to welcome all of the go-getters to join us.